So last night, the Red Wings lost their sixth straight game, six in a row. That is almost as much as they've had in terms of winning streak. If they lose tomorrow against the Buffalo Sabres, that would match their highest total win streak of the year. Here's the thing, all right? I didn't put this in the notes, but yesterday's game was the epitome of the Steve Yzerman, the Yzer plan being a complete and utter farce. So last night, they played the Ottawa Senators. Now, the Ottawa Senators in the standings, let me just take a look right now. They are currently in the top wildcard spot. They are a grand total of 5 points ahead of you now, thanks to that win. And they made some moves recently and in the offseason. So, in the game, the first goal is scored by some guy named David Perron. Now, for those of you who are observant and know a little bit about hockey history, David Perron spent a couple of years with the Detroit Red Wings. He was an assistant captain. He was a vet on the team. He's former Stanley Cup champion with the St. Louis Blues. He was, generally speaking, a pretty respectable goal scorer, not an elite player. Obviously, sort of past his prime if he really had one. Not an elite player, but of course, in the one game that we have to play the Senators, he comes out and he scores a goal. 1-0 Sens. Okay. Then Dylan Larkin, I believe, ties it up. And you're like, all right, we're back in it. Okay. 1-1. The game is 1-1 throughout most of it. Now, the shots on goal. Let me see if I could get the actual stats here. Box score. Hopefully, maybe this does not tell me the shots on. Hey, here we go. The shots on goal was pretty incredibly one-sided in favor of the Red Wings. 49 shots on goal, 23 shots on goal for the Senators. So anyway, we're tied 1-1. All right. Late in the game, Mo Seider gets a power play, and the Senators score on the power play. Who scores the goal? Well, none other than the man himself, Dylan Cousins. In a power play goal. Now, granted, both of the goals for Ottawa were on the power play, with David Perron's, obviously, his fourth goal of the year. And Dylan Cousins. That's interesting. So I seem to remember Dylan Cousins. I don't think he played for Ottawa going into the. Oh, that's right. He didn't. He actually played for the Buffalo Sabres, and he was a name that I had brought up in passing, not necessarily that you have to go get him. He was a name that I thought, hey, maybe the Red Wings go after this guy. And he goes ahead and gets the game-winning goal. But then I've thought, well, wait a minute. Okay, forget the 2 goals. Okay, 2 goals is not that much. How is it that we only had 1 goal? Who was in net for the Ottawa Senators? I was going to say the Ottawa Sabres. The Ottawa Senators, you might be asking. Well, it was some guy by the name of. Hold on, I'm blank. I want to get his name right. Excuse me. Some guy by the name of Linus Ullmark. Well, that's interesting. So if I just go ahead and pull up Linus Ullmark's little page here on NHL.com, that's interesting because I thought Linus Ullmark played for the Boston Bruins. That's odd. And then now this is his first year with the Senators. So, in other words, he was an off-season addition. So let me get this straight. Against the Ottawa Senators, you had a player we let walk score a power play goal on us. A player we opted not to trade for, presumably, score a goal on us. And a goalie we opted not to trade for or go out and, I think it was a trade, go out and get in the offseason, goalie us. Go for 48 out of 49 saves on us. If this is not the epitome of the Yzer plan, of the Steve Yzerman administration for the Detroit Red Wings, I don't know what is. because I'm sorry, I'm out. I'm done. I'm done with Steve Yzerman. I'm done with the excuses. I'm done with the just wait until X comes up. Just wait until, Carter Mazer, who gets hurt immediately after coming into the game. Who could have seen that coming? Just wait until until Steve Yzerman really can cook. So I just got a question for any of the Yzerman slappies and homers that are still left out there. Because I don't know how you could be left out there. What's it gonna take? What is it gonna take? Like, what do the Red Wings have to do? Do they have to lose all 82 games? Do they have to, lose the entire month of March? Do they have to have blown a 7-game series in the stand? Like, what is it that they have to do before you realize, wait a minute, Steve Yzerman kind of sucks. Like, not as a player. His player, he was great. As a GM. Because you start to think, hold on, this roster, when you really look at it, who is responsible for how this roster made it this way? Well, you have Lucas Raymond leading the team in points with 66, which is good. It's a little more than a point a game. You have Dylan Larkin as your captain. He's got 56 points. Now, I know this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but if Dylan Larkin is your captain, if Dylan Larkin is tasked with being the leader on your team, you're not going to win a Stanley Cup. Period. You're just not. Okay? He just is not the guy. Okay? If he was on any other playoff caliber team right now, he would not be on the first line. That is a fact. Okay? If he was on Washington, he wouldn't be on the first line. If he was on Toronto, he wouldn't be on the first line. If he was on Edmonton, wouldn't be on the first line. Need I go on? If he was on Dallas, he wouldn't be on the first line. If he was on blanking on them, what's their names? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking. The Panthers wouldn't be on the first line. The Devils, he just is not that guy, okay? So, let's forget about let's just get over this fantasy that the hometown kid Dylan Larkin is going to save us, okay? Because I got to tell you, the amount of times I've seen comments of people saying, "Well, Steve Yzerman didn't win his first cup until he was 30." There's a little bit of a slight difference, I think, between Dylan Larkin and Steve Yzerman. You think maybe there's just like a teeny tiny little bit. It's a teeny tiny little bit of difference. Okay. Then I go down the rest of the roster, and you got DeBrincat, good player. I like the move. You got Kane. Okay, he's a fine player. And you got Moritz Seider. And then basically you got everybody else. Basically, you got a ragtag group of guys that pretty much nobody wants and pretty much nobody asked for. Vladimir Tarasenko utterly sucks. JT Compher is awful. Andrew Copp, he's hurt, but when he was healthy, you wouldn't know it. Jonathan Berggren is quite possibly one of the most weirdly overrated prospects. I remember him constantly being talked about. Where's Jonathan Berggren? But he's not very good. That's the fact. Okay. Then you got your Eric Gustafsons of the world, the Ben Sherratts of the world, your the Justin Halls of the world. This roster that was constructed over 6 years by Steve Yzerman is so utterly awful, okay? And let me put some of this terribleness into perspective. From the late 60s, from the late 1960s to the early 80s, the Detroit Red Wings were known as the Dead Things, okay? They were awful. They made it to the playoffs 2 times. Their longest playoff drought was 7 years, over half a decade, almost an entire decade. Do you know what your playoff drought is right now? 9. If you don't make it this year, which I suspect you will not, if you do not make it this year, it will be 9 years since the Red Wings last made the playoffs. I believe 10 years since they last won a series. Probably, maybe even a little more. I don't actually know. But my goodness, this Red Wings team, this era is beyond saving. Okay, we're talking about an era where Your highlight is Dylan Larkin. I, I'm sorry. It's just not working out. And to all the Yzerman people, can you please point what is it that's giving you hope? What is it that's letting you hold on to this idea that the Red Wings are that Steve Yzerman is going to turn it around? I got a bit of a newsflash for you. Steve Yzerman got us in this mess. Like, if Steve Yzerman's name was, oh, I don't know, Troy Weaver or Al Avila or Bob Quinn or Matt Millen or any of these terrible GMs that any other team in the city of Detroit has had, he would have been fired. But his name is Steve Yzerman. And because his name is Steve Yzerman, nobody is allowed to say anything mean about him, despite the fact that he's made maybe one good pro move, despite the fact that most of his draft picks aren't even in the NHL, including a goalie that ostensibly is supposed to be the savior, but not according to Steve Yzerman. You want to know why I think that? Because Steve Yzerman believes that Peter Mrazek at age 100, having one of the worst stretches of hockey he's ever had, he thinks that he is an improvement in net and that he will help the team. And we're going to be paying him another $4 million next year to have a goalie tandem, presumably, of Cam Talbot and Peter Mrazek. And I got to hear about, you're going to be sorry in 2030 when we're finally competitive. You're going to be sorry once, Nate Danielson becomes Gordie Howe. Let me tell you something. If I had a nickel, just a nickel, or even, you know what? If I had a penny for every prospect that I was told about, I'd be a rich man. All right. I've never heard a team get so high on their own supply of guys. Look, you want to say that Axel Sandin Pellikka has the makings to be a good defenseman in the future? Yeah, maybe he does. There's only one problem. He's playing in Sweden. He's not in the NHL. And if he was so good, if he was far and away the most great, amazing, perfect defenseman, okay, he'd be here. He would be here. He would not be in Sweden. If he was this all-star, he's never going to, he's going to be Nick Lindstrom 2.0. He would be here. Now, that's not fair to him because he's got to have time to develop. He's got to have time to play at the level, to play at a pro level and get acclimated to that speed. But if you think you're just going to pick off Axel Sandin Pellikka, who probably won't even be on the team until 2 years from now, maybe you get him next year. And then you got to give them a little bit of time because it takes some time for these guys to learn the NHL level. Like, we're talking about just making the playoffs. We can't even do that. And you're telling me that, Danielson and Pellikka and, all of these guys, the Carter Mazers, and that they're just going to waltz in and bring us to the promised land? It's not going to happen. All right. And you know what's funny? This is the second year in a row I've had to make this kind of segment that I've had to talk about this. At a certain point, it's deja vu all over again. At a certain point, maybe the guy putting the groceries together is to blame. Not the chef, not the rotten tomatoes. Maybe it's the guy buying the rotten tomatoes. So, look, I'm out on Steve Yzerman. I think by the end of this season, if not right now, you just let him go. We're not winning with him. I don't think we're gonna win. It doesn't make any difference to me. We're not winning with him, so we might as well lose without him. We might as well. If you can cite to me something other than his draft picks, and even then, if you're citing draft picks, as far as I'm concerned, you're losing. And one last thing. Brad Holmes took over a Lions team in 2020 going into 2021. That was one of the worst teams in the league. Had absolutely no talent on the roster. By year 3, that team was a half away from a Super Bowl. Already had won the division. Okay? All right. Scott Harris took over one of the worst teams in baseball. Awful farm system. Very little hitting prospects. Pretty much a hodgepodge of guys with two seemingly pretty bad contracts on the books in Eduardo Rodriguez and Javier Baez. By year 2, he got that team to the playoffs with some savvy trades, some decent offseason moves, and some solid player development. And the icing on the cake, Trajan Langdon took over a Pistons team that quite literally had the worst year ever as a franchise and had a roster that was made up of centers and players with no shown ability to that point to shoot the ball. And right now, they're on the verge of potentially being the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference and make and host a playoff series. I understand that hockey is not basketball, hockey is not basketball, baseball, or football. I understand. But you do not get 6 years to make the playoffs. I don't care if you never win the lottery. I don't care if, some guys get hurt. I don't care if you had to fire your head coach. You don't get 6, 7, 8 years to just make the playoffs. It's ridiculous. And I'm sorry, we can cut our time, we can cut it loose now, or we can waste more of our time in the years to come. So you can hold out hope that maybe this next offseason he's finally going to make the right moves. Probably won't. He hasn't made the right moves since he's gotten here. So, Steve Yzerman, don't let the door hit you out on the back. On the way you're. Well, you know what? Let me start that over. Steve Yzerman, don't let the door hit you on the way out, because I'm just done. And you can, hockey fans, you can say I don't know what I'm talking about. Hey man, I've been right the whole way. I've been consistently correct on this. Every year that you set some sort of a barrier, he does not reach that barrier, and you just move it along. I, on the other hand, have held him to a standard that's been consistent. So, if you want to hold on to hope that the guy who shot the overtime goal against St. Louis back in the day is gonna bring you back the old Stanley, I like to live in La La Land too sometimes, but La La Land is not a real place. I do not want to go to Rainbow Land, and you can't make me. Hi, it's me again. If you enjoyed what you just saw, hit the like and subscribe button. We do live shows every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Hope to see you there.